Hey everybody, this is section 4.2, Properties of Isosceles Triangles. So this is going to be a pretty brief lesson. We start with the parts of an isosceles triangle, and you can see the picture of the isosceles triangle here. Notice, certainly by definition, an isosceles triangle is a triangle that has at least two congruent sides, and you can see those congruent sides happening right here. We also have at the top of the isosceles triangle what's called a vertex angle, right? And this is the angle that is formed by the two congruent sides of the triangle. Then we have the base angles, which would be the other two angles, the two angles that are formed by one congruent side and one non-congruent side. And of course the base. So the base would be the side that is not one of the two congruent sides here. So triangles, and isosceles triangles in particular, are very common in architecture. Triangle is a very strong shape, so it's used oftentimes in skyscrapers. So we see a couple pictures here. This is a skyscraper in San Francisco. Here's a different perspective of it from the bottom. You can see on the bottom of it, sort of the foundation of this building is itself an isosceles triangle. And there's a picture of it from the sky. Pretty impressive building for sure. Take a look at another example. We have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. You can see all the isosceles triangles there. There's another picture of it, and a picture of it at night. Again, an impressive building, right? Not only is it architecturally sound, it's strong, but it's also appealing to the eye. So a couple of things to remember about isosceles triangles. First, the definition of the isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has at least two congruent sides. And I mentioned this definition before, and let me sort of emphasize that phrase right there, at least two congruent sides. That means that an isosceles triangle could have three congruent sides. And we talked about this in the first unit, right, that an equilateral triangle is an isosceles triangle. But not all isosceles triangles are equilateral triangles. All right, next thing, isosceles triangle conjecture. If a triangle is isosceles, then its base angles are congruent. Okay, so real quick, let's just draw a diagram. That would be an isosceles triangle. That means that these base angles are congruent. Right, now this is a conjecture at this point. This is something that we may come back and prove. And then we have the converse of the isosceles triangle conjecture. And it states if a triangle has two congruent angles, then it is an isosceles triangle. So if I draw a diagram of this, it would sort of work in the opposite direction, right? We would label the base angles as congruent. That would be the given information. And then we could conclude that the two sides are indeed congruent, thus an isosceles triangle.